Sure. So I should have started this a few minutes ago. I am recording the conversation. There's a few folks who wanted to join our conversation, couldn't attend. So everyone, be nice, okay? Don't say anything mean about your colleagues at other universities. I know yours are the best institutions, but so we are being recorded. All right, great. Thanks, John. And I did invite a colleague of mine, Artie, who is she's a young entrepreneur and was curious about some of the conversations that are going on. So she'll listen in. Ray, I think you're on as well. Can you hear us? Ray may be muted, so we'll come back to him. Robin, if you can introduce yourself.
Sure. This is Robin Steinmetz. I'm the Director of Marketing for Stark State College. I've been with the college for just over a year, and I'm kind of filling in for Marie Cerrone, my supervisor, who is in a conference in DC. So we're just happy to be at the table and looking forward to whatever we can do to help.
Okay, wonderful. Excellent. Is there anybody else who joined us on the call that I may not have called upon? Okay. All right. So we'll keep going. All right. So let me just take a few minutes to provide a little bit of background context on how this conversation came to be. Some of you may be familiar with the Strengthening Stark strategic report that was developed in roughly summer of 2017. So that report came out and it sort of helped articulate some key challenges economically that had been developing in the region. Those patterns primarily were that the Stark County is getting older, it's getting smaller, and it's getting poorer. So we're starting to see sort of shrinkage of businesses, the types of jobs, and obviously the population. So recognizing that these are some pretty stark challenges, and understanding that we have a sort of county-wide challenge, the community leaders got together and they initiated a more detailed economic planning exercise in the fall of 2017, and I had an opportunity to sort of help spearhead that effort. So starting last fall, we've had a chance to work with many of you, hear about some of the work that's going on your respective campuses. We've engaged with over 200 individuals across the county, looked at a lot of economic data. And you know, like any economic story, there's obviously challenges in the region, but as we look closely, we can also identify some really great potential and opportunities. And you know, probably the biggest one is the fact that we're having a conversation with all of you. So to have half a dozen universities, colleges in this region, sort of being a direct institution, a capability for our community to upskill our people, that's not a sort of typical thing we see in communities like Stark. And I have an opportunity to do economic planning work across the country. And so there's definitely something very powerful, unique, that's happening in Stark County. So we were really, as we did the strategic planning work, we were looking for what are those assets to build upon further. So broadly speaking, we anchored our study on 7 core pillars. Those pillars were: 1, try to figure out how we govern and manage the effort of economic development planning. How do we make sure that all the work that's going on is sort of synchronized in a way that whether you live in Alliance, Massillon, Minerva, Canton, North Canton, that you're sort of seeing the benefit of the work. Regardless of which university or college you're affiliated with, that each one of our partners, our citizens, can see material benefits of the work. And that's not always easy because given sort of the historical context of Stark County, we have a lot of baggage in many ways. So being able to govern ourselves succinctly is crucially important. Second is talent pipeline. How do we build a stronger talent pipeline in the region so that, basically economic development is nothing more than smart people doing great things for themselves, and as a process, as a counter result, we're helping elevate our regional economics. So how do we make sure that we have smart, motivated individuals plugged into the right opportunities? Third, fourth, fifth have to do with our businesses. Third is how do we retain and expand existing businesses? Fourth is how do we help attract strategically important businesses to our region? Fifth is innovation and entrepreneurship. So that's our conversation today is really in that fifth bucket, but it ties to every other element. Sixth is infrastructure. Infrastructure can be a big conversation, so we've really limited it to a couple of key concepts, things that directly need to be built to connect our workforce to our businesses: transportation, broadband, site development, so that we have investable sites in our community. And then the last is community engagement. How do we make sure that the work that we're doing helps our citizens directly? And too often when economic development studies are done, we sort of forget to engage with our most crucial, vulnerable populations. So as an example, about 6 months ago, we launched a series of advisory committees. We have a minority advisory committee set up with African American leaders. We have an advisory committee set up with Latino leaders. The college leaders that we brought together, you know, it was sort of surprising and complimentary in a way, because when we got our college leaders, university leaders together, what they admitted to us was that they'd never sat in a room together to cohesively think about Stark story. Like they attend conferences, they meet, they know who each other are, and they certainly have some relationships. But how do they come together to think about regional asset development, regional contributions, connectivity? And so those conversations have been very powerful. We sent you guys some summary notes from some of our conversations to date, so you can look and see what how those conversations have transpired. So that, in essence, is Strengthening Stark effort. Broad 7 categories. Underneath those 7 categories, there's 29 initiatives that have been outlined that help us focus on different elements of our economics. One of those 29 elements is Stark innovation. So this is sort of the second phase of our discussion. But let me pause right there before we talk about the next piece. Any questions, thoughts, reactions so far that you may want to share, or questions you want to ask?
I might be very naive while, you know, I don't have had the opportunity of reading the entire document and so on. How do you assess all the pillars that you have talked about? How do you assess the success of all these, you know, efforts?
Yeah, great question, Dr. Mukherjee. So we've been putting together fairly detailed tactical plans around each one of those 29 initiatives.
Okay.
We have metrics identified which each of the 29 initiatives that we would like to move the needle on. And I guess metrics are such an important part of this conversation. Everything we're doing, we want to make sure we're driving measurable impact. Mm-hmm. And while there's lots of sub-metrics, I think I want us to all anchor on the major North Star for our program. And what I think is exciting about this program is the way we've defined our North Star is very unique to Stark County. We've never sort of defined economic development in these specific terms. So this is how we've contextualized the where we're going.
Okay.
We've said typically economic development is about jobs, wages, maybe population increase, and those are all relevant. Mm-hmm. But it's not encompassing enough. So we were trying to figure out what's the one-line statement that encompasses what we're trying to do, and the way we've characterized it is as such. The goal of Strengthening Stark is to help build personal capital for all our citizens. All our citizens, personal capital. We want to do that so that our citizens can then pursue opportunities for themselves to elevate their quality of life in a manner that's most relevant, suitable, appropriate for them. So it's not about charity, it's not about philanthropy, it's not about forcing people down pathways. It's about making sure that every one of our citizens have legitimate, ladders that they can walk up. And then we take that word personal capital and we break it down to a couple of specific points. Those points are, there's 4 ways in which we're defining personal capital. One is financial capital.
Mm-hmm.
And it's important to say capital because it's about balance sheet, it's about wealth, it's more than just a paycheck.
Absolutely.
We want to create the foundation that allows people to then use that foundation to go buy a house, invest in education, have a security blanket when economics go sideways. Financial capital. Second is intellectual capital. You're part of that story, right? How do we make sure that our people are on a pathway of continually building their intellectual capabilities? Given the speed of innovation, given the speed of development, the only way Stark County, our citizens, will be able to keep up with the global economics is if we have mechanisms that are helping upskill our people. Doesn't matter if you're an 8th grader, a kindergartner, or a 50-year-old individual. What are the ways in which we're consistently upgrading the skill sets of our people? So that's intellectual capital. Third is social capital. One of the odd patterns we've found is it's more than just job creation, because what we're finding is in Stark County, we have a lot of jobs open and we have people that are looking for jobs. For some reason, there's a disconnect in people being able to make that connection. Part of it has to do with sort of physically where people live, what their capabilities are, what their intellectual capacities are. Part of it is social capital. 50 to 60% of people get their jobs because someone they know, calling someone, getting referrals. And if you have a population that's disenfranchised and has limited social networks, their ability to access jobs in networks that they're fractured from becomes highly unlikely. And then the fourth is health capital. And health capital is sort of a sub-bullet. It's crucial in economic terms, but we're not directly tackling it because it's a big element. We're going to get to it through partners, not necessarily because we're going to be directly engaged. So that's what we're trying to do. Great question, Dr. Mukherjee. Other thoughts, questions? Okay, so with that, go ahead. Sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
If I may actually add on to that, so the social capital, there is enough, kind of research to suggest that social capital kind of promotes and helps to get employment and make the employment compatibility way much better.
Exactly.
I was kind of reading the clusters and agglomeration and stuff like that, and it definitely fits in the very extant literature that talks about it, of what you are saying. So
thank you. Awesome. So the next piece that I want to highlight is, what is this innovation thing that we're talking about? So I sent you some materials, I think I did, when I sent the initial email out. But here's what we're talking about. The challenge, we've got sort of two-sided challenge. On one side of the equation, we have Stark County with roughly 15,500 establishments, businesses. We know the profiles of these businesses. Of the 15,500, roughly 14,000 are small businesses, i.e. less than $7 million in annual revenues. Many of these businesses are second generation, third generation businesses. One pattern that we find in our conversations with these business leaders is we're not being innovative enough. We're not being thoughtful enough about how the local, regional, national, global economy is shifting and how our businesses can continue to stay relevant, competitive in an extremely dynamic world. We know that's a challenge on our business side. We have some business owners that are enthusiastic about adapting, about evolving, and others that aren't. But we know there's a need on that side. That's one side of the equation. The second side of the equation is we have you. We have incredible academic institutions, research institutions. We have incredible intelligence when folks like you and leaders like you who have the ideas, who have the students, who has, in some cases, has the capacity, whether it's classrooms, lectures, programs, research. So we have something here, and we have a need here. But we're not connecting our need and our solutions in a way that are perfectly aligned. Part of it is because the two worlds look very different. You may be publishing research reports. Well, that's not really relevant to a business owner because it may not be in a consumable manner. They need something that's pithy, actionable, succinct. We may or may not have that. So what we're trying to drive is that specific conversation. How do we get these two worlds to connect better? It's a big conversation. Many communities have tackled it. Many communities are struggling to do it. And this is where I want to sort of take a step back and be very humble about this conversation. I am not that smart about the work that you guys do on research, academics. You're way, way smarter. Our hope is that through your participation, we can sort of figure out what that pathway looks like. Now, we also recognize that these conversations aren't, we get together for 45 minutes and then we solve it and we put a check next to it and then we move on to the next thing. It doesn't work that way. It will require some deliberate effort on all of our parts to figure out how we line up our opportunities. We also recognize that given your respective institution, there is a competitive landscape that you exist in. You're competing for resources, students. So recognizing that that's the landscape, the question is, are there ways in which we can find 1%, 2%, a common need opportunity where we could be much more collaborative? So that's the opportunity we're trying to work through. And as we were thinking about this, and in speaking with some of you, here's, take all of those needs and we can synthesize it down to here's the broad concept that we would like to focus on. In 2019, we would like to hold an innovation contest. We would like each one of you to identify a domain that's relevant to you. And so I'll use Dr. Dunphy as an example. In speaking with him and some of his colleagues, we were brainstorming what this could look like. So one of the things they highlighted was that they're looking to launch a certificate program in data science, data analytics. And so we were kind of brainstorming and saying, okay, well, that's a really powerful thing. Every research that talks about the future of jobs, the number one thing you find in every report is the need for data scientists, need for people to be able to dissect data, understand what data is telling you, converting data into information, into insight that's applicable to businesses. We know our businesses are capturing lots of data and they're fundamentally not using it to drive their business prosperity. So using that just as an example, the idea would be if Walsh says, we're gonna own that specific vertical, data science. And then we're going to look to identify who are the most innovative businesses across Stark County doing interesting work with data. So we sort of profile local businesses. The reason we're doing that is because we're telling the community, this is not something that's happening on the coast. This is not something that's happening in New York City or Boston. This is good work happening with our local companies. And here's what they're doing. Here's how they're leveraging data as an asset to help sustain and expand their businesses. So we do that. And then as we hold that contest, 6-10 months from now, we actually have an event. We celebrate those businesses that are leading their way in this area. We sort of backdoor a conversation, which is, by the way, if your name is not on this list and you're interested in this conversation, recognizing that this is where the world is headed, go to Walsh University and partner in their certificate program. And so part of what we need to work then with you is to say, how do we make your packaged programming as succinct, impactful for businesses? So so again, just sort of keeping that example in mind, in this case, we were saying, how do we maybe have sort of a case study orientation to that certificate program where a business sends an individual to a 6-8 week program. They come in with a business problem. And when they come, that's the business problem they're solving for. They're learning technical skills on how to manipulate data and drive insights. By the time that certificate program's over, they've garnered some deep insights about their business that they can apply back into their business. So they have an insight that's applicable, and they have an individual who now has understood a capability that they can apply on an ongoing basis. That is the innovation contest that we're talking about. And this is sort of just a wisp of an idea right now, but we're sort of throwing it out to you to gauge your enthusiasm. Or I'm glad no one hung up yet, so you guys are hanging out with us, so I appreciate that. But please react to, I know I shared quite a bit there, so I'll shut up now and have you guys react. So Dr. Dunphy, let's just start with you, because obviously we've spent some time talking about that. If I may have misquoted anything, please jump in and correct me.
No problem. My internet service has been kind of spotty a bit. I'm not sure if you're all having the same issue. So if I freeze up or jump out, it comes right back, but it takes a minute, just like it did just there. So what Harshu was talking about, I had Raj Javalji, who was our new dean of the business school, here meeting with the three of us on campus, and we were looking at ways to be able to leverage what Harshu and his group are doing, and I know all of us in the universities are trying to find ways to increase enrollment, strengthen our existing programs, collaborate. We were trying to get our students involved in internships. We have all these things always going on, and to the point of this competition. To be able, in our way of thinking, is, we see ourselves as community partners. I know that our institutions are competing for the same pool of students out there, but that's almost irrelevant, because that's going to happen no matter what we do. The important thing is that if we can find ways to be able to showcase our strengths, to connect into local businesses, to get our students involved in all sorts of activities, do it in a way which is very productive and joyful, that we all win. It's a win-win situation for everyone. And we start easy. Start simple. When we talked about data analytics and with Raj, there was other things we could have done, but that particular one just sort of stuck out simply because it's one of Raj's projects right now to do that. And our mathematicians, our computer science people, and our business folks are all interested in collaborating on that. It seemed like a natural fit for us to move in that direction. But there's many other ways that could occur. Kind of a last point with this, as when Harshu was here last time on campus, I had him talk to the entire School of Arts and Sciences, which included humanities, it included the fine and performing arts people, the science folks, communication, literature, language, the entire group. And what I wanted them to hear was, it doesn't matter what your major is or what your discipline is, there's always ways to connect, to advance your cause and to plug into something meaningful. And a lot of the folks there, like even the historians, were really interested because of the kinds of perspectives that business people can bring to students studying history. There was immediate connections that were taking place. So what I really wanted to be able to do on the first connect into the process here was to try to get people who don't normally think about this, people in the liberal arts and people who are in the humanities, to see if there's ways they could connect in with their talents and their capabilities. There's more natural fits for mathematicians, computer science folks, scientists, typically, because businesses often utilize them for their research capabilities. But people have to also write. They've got to be able to do graphic design work, and they need to communicate. There's all those other elements that I think all of us can bring to the table in different ways. That I thought was a great opportunity to sort of advance the arts that way, and the folks that tend to be peripheralized academically. And so those are some of the thoughts we had as we were going through this, and the sort of immediate low-hanging fruit was the data analytics, because obviously it's a huge area, and it's something which we are really putting a lot of effort into, and so it made a natural fit for us. That's kind of a short version of a longer conversation.
Thank you, Dr. Dunphy.
Welcome.
John, thoughts from you, sir?
Nothing yet.
Okay.
It's rolling around in my head. Don't have anything yet. This is, as you said, like new.
Yeah. Great. Okay. Robin, how about you? Thoughts?
I'm kind of thinking the same thing, just trying to take all this in, but if I can make another example just to clarify a little bit. So is this almost like, for anyone in the room who's done like Leadership Stark County, and you adopt a project or a problem and try to create a solution? Is that kind of the concept? So we would have our students in maybe multiple different classes kind of come together and come up with these solutions to help?
That
or
wasn't
is that
quite
too
the idea.
rudimentary?
Yeah, no, let me, this is, again, we wanted to start with a hypothesis. It can be tweaked.
Mm-hmm.
What you're saying can definitely be part of it, but it's slightly different what we were thinking. So our thought was, so if you can just hypothesis what 2019 can look like, our goal would be, say by January of 2019, each one of you identifies one focal area.
Okay.
So again, the example that Walsh used was around data analytics, data science, right? So you say this is the area we want to focus. University of Akron may say engineering, right? Because they're so strong. Or polymers, because you can pick an industry orientation or you can pick a functional orientation. All right. So then you'll say, okay, this is where we want to focus. And then what we'll do is work collectively to say, we're going to work with our chambers of commerce, economic development leaders to say, help us understand who are the local, and you come up with your criteria on what you're looking for in that vertical. And then we work with our economic development partners to do a scan. We can do sort of an application process where businesses say, we're doing something really interesting in this space. We want to be nominated or we want to be considered for this award.
Gotcha. Okay.
So then I gotcha. Through sort of an evaluation process, and what we're trying to be nuanced about this. So yes, it's sort of an innovation contest, but alongside what we're trying to do is really create a platform to talk about. I mean, if we have 6 universities and colleges at the table, we're talking about 6 distinct areas of focus that our businesses have to be thinking about. And if they're not thinking about it, we're saying, go talk to Dr. Mukherjee, go talk to John, go talk to Robin, because they're doing these things, and here's how you can tap into some intellectual innovation development capabilities.
Okay.
And one other thing I would add, which I didn't mention so far, was we're working towards one major event every year. So we're going to be holding a Strengthening Stark week. Roughly 2nd to 3rd week of October is annually when we hold this event where we're showcasing all the incredible economic, community, workforce development work happening across our communities. And we're sort of thinking that's sort of when we're profiling your universities, your work, these businesses, and really we're creating a platform where we're saying to our businesses, our worlds are evolving really rapidly. Unless you're engaged in some development, research and development activities, there's no way you can keep up with a sustainable business, because you're just not going to be competitive in that evolving world. Dr. Mukherjee, thoughts from you, sir?
So can we go back to our constituencies? Because the fact is, since as you have mentioned, there are 6 universities. So can I go back to my constituency and narrate your thoughts and say, okay, by January 2019, we will come up with a focal area. What would be your suggestion? Like, do you think that's something prudent? Like going back to my campus and say, this is the question from Stark Economic Development Board, and this is what we want to do. What would be your suggestion? Do you think that's how we need to approach, is what I'm asking probably?
Yes, absolutely. And frankly, today's conversation is really getting us started on this journey. So I'll be very frank, that we don't have funding for this work, right? But our hope is that each of our universities, this aligns with what you want to do on your campuses anyways. So my hope is that because we're sort of taking a distributed approach, Dr. Mukherjee, you go back to Kent State University and say, okay, what's our 1 or 2 shining areas that we want to highlight? Especially think about where the economics are going globally in the next 10, 20, 30 years, right? Maybe it's autonomous vehicles. Maybe like if you think about those big concepts, and then how do you take that big concept and link it to something relevant and meaningful for our businesses today? So absolutely. I think going back to your faculty and speaking to them, so I think there's two conversations. One is around what's our area of focus, and second is starting to hammer out the logistics. Just tactically, how do we proceed forward in the next 11, 12 months so that, you know, if our win is October 2019, you're all sitting up on a stage and we've got all these businesses and we're giving these awards out and there's enthusiasm. As we sort of think of that as the event, how do we work our way to making that a successful thing? That's incredibly powerful.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Is there anyone else on the call? I'm seeing a few phone numbers. I just want to make sure if there's someone there who has some thoughts or questions, please jump in.
Hi, Rishi. This is Anu Vyas from the University of Akron. I'm sorry I joined a little bit later. My last meeting ran much longer than expected, so I'm just taking it all in with some of the comments here.
Great. And you know, we actually taped we're taping this conversation, so I'll be happy to share with you a video link so you can walk through the conversation, and I'll be happy to Anu, spend some time with you one-on-one and get you up to speed as well. You guys are a major. Anu, you want to just briefly introduce yourself, Anu?
Yeah, so my name is Anu Vyas. I'm the co-director of the Excel Center for Experiential Learning, so getting students out in the community, working on real-world projects, becoming civic-minded, engaged, and also entrepreneurially focused. With
University of Akron.
Yep.
All right. So yeah, you're absolutely, we can do that. Is there anyone else out there? Okay. All right. So let me throw a couple of questions out there, or maybe let me hypothesize a next step, and please react if you think this makes sense. But I know we've shared a lot today, so perhaps each one of you can go back and share some of these thoughts with some of your peers on campus, and just get some initial reactions. And then if you want to think a little bit about, for just your organization, your institution, as you think about the next 11 months, sort of getting to that, you know, visual space that we said, we are having a contest, we're announcing winners, we're showcasing your capabilities, your academic work, your research work, highlighting how businesses can participate on your campuses for ongoing education. You know, what's a pathway you think we should be taking? And any thoughts you have, you know, on a quarterly basis, January, February, March of next year, here's the things, two or three things we should be tackling, Q2, Q3. So maybe if you can think about that a little bit, what I can do is set up maybe a Google document and set it up in a way where each one of you can go in and just kind of start jotting down some thoughts. And then perhaps in 2 to 3 weeks, we can have a follow-up conversation, another virtual session, as a next conversation amongst us, which then eventually what I'd like to do is get us all together physically in a room where we're sort of getting to know each other a little bit, and doing some problem solving together. But I know it's end of semester for many of you, so I don't want to burden you guys with too much time, but maybe January-ish we can have an in-person conversation. So what are your thoughts and reactions to that approach? Dr. Mukherjee, thoughts?
Sounds like a plan to me.
Okay. John, thoughts?
Sounds great.
Good. Let's see. Dr. Dunphy, thoughts?
Yeah, that'll work. If we do have a connect in the next few weeks, I'm going to be leaving the country on the 15th of December, so it'd be before that I can participate. And then in January, February is fine for another. I think having a meeting, all of us together at some point would be productive. In the meantime, I think having as much information flow from you as possible about progress, what's going on, the conversations. So
Yeah.
we're all kind of getting a feeling for what the progress is at least in the academic realm.
Yes.
I think that'd be good. Just a recommendation to everyone else on the call, if you haven't done it yet, I don't know who's done this or not. Rashu can come to campus, and he has when he does, he can do presentations, and he can help sort of clarify what the whole process is with your departments, divisions, or whatever. And when we did it, what I was surprised to find was that the people I didn't think would have any interest at all were the ones who had the most interest and began asking questions. You know what I mean? So I think the more people that hear about this from their own discipline perspective, needs, whatever, there's a tendency to then start a conversation in a different way. So to encourage that, number one. And the other thing that we haven't mentioned yet, I don't think, my internet keeps going in and out, so I'm not catching everything that Rishu's saying. But there's a huge need for us, and I'm sure for all the other schools on here, to get internships set up with businesses all over Stark County. And I think this is a great way to catalyze that process, to build the relationships necessary for our students to have access to these businesses across the spectrum, small and big. And so I can see this could catalyze that quite nicely. So that's another win that we could pull out of this, even collaborative internship stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Something to think about.
Thank you. Great. Thank you. Yeah, actually, great point. I should have mentioned that earlier. Under our talent pipeline initiative, we're actually, as a matter of fact, I'm right now sitting at RG Drake. We had a meeting here with some of the students and some faculty around how we pull in our career technical students into a more, we're calling it a high-performing career planning pathways. And part of that is education as well. So how do we make sure that starting in middle school, our students are plugged into careers of choice, whether it's through the career tech pathway or through a 2-year, 4-year college education, military. So we're trying to really hammer down how we've strengthened our talent supply chain. So Dr. Dumpy, thank you for highlighting that. And Robin, thoughts from you?
No, this all sounds great. I think we are definitely on board and excited to see how it turns out.
Great. I know you joined a little late, but any thoughts on the next steps? How does that sound to you?
Yeah, no, that sounds good. Looking forward to it.
Okay. I think that just the two last points that I have. One is I wanted to share with you real briefly the other conversations that we're having with your college leaders. We're having two specific other conversations. One is around we're working with your career placement services to figure out what are the activities going on amongst your career placement service offices. So we just had a call with them yesterday, actually. And what was interesting was we sort of highlighted some common issues that all of your institutions are facing. One of them is just getting students to the career placement office. Students are coming too late. They're not really leveraging career placement services as effectively as they can. So part of it is sort of how do you get student engagement? So, but what was interesting is it was a very common set of top 4 or 5 issues that everyone's facing. So there's a lot of enthusiasm in having that conversation and identifying, are there 1 or 2 things we could be doing? First and foremost is data. How do we make sure we're getting accurate data on job openings, job listings, future of jobs, wage data by occupation category? So that conversation has started, and we're going to be meeting with that group again in 2 weeks. The other conversation is I'd sent a request out to some of you may have gotten it, or maybe your peers, in the interest of making sure that we are listening to the voice of our customers, in this case, our students. We're looking to set up an advisory committee of college students from your respective institutions. So we've sent a request out to some of your student leader groups. And each institution, we've asked them to identify 4 to 5 students that would like to participate in this sort of a college and student advisory board. So that's happening. And our hope is that as that conversation starts, they become, in a way, sort of a de facto group for us to say, okay, here are the things we're thinking about. Here's what we're conceiving. Now, as voices of our students, what else should we be thinking about? Did we miss anything? So that's happening. And I just kind of wanted to make sure you have that sense. If it's okay, we've had a really productive meeting.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes you talk about one more thing and the whole house of cards falls apart. I'm going to take a risk and I'm going to try putting one more card on our house here, which is figuring out calendars is such an excruciatingly painful exercise that while I have you on the call, perhaps we could look at our calendars. If I could throw out a couple of dates, I'm pretty sure we won't get all of you on a call at the same time. We do record these conversations for that very reason. But let me throw maybe 1 or 2 dates out and see how this works for you. Let's see. How would the morning of Friday the 7th of December be for you for, let's say, an hour call? Who does it not work for?
We're hosting a huge event that morning at Walsh, a girls' coding camp. It'll be going from 8 a.m. until about 3 in the afternoon. And I'm speaking in the morning at this event, so I'll be tied up. Unless it's 6 in the morning, I won't be able to do it.
Okay, got it. All right.
And we're looking at the 7th, you said, of December?
Yeah.
Friday? Okay.
Okay, how about 3rd of December? That's a Monday.
7th is still fine. Monday would be difficult for me, I think.
Okay.
Morning is good, afternoon is not.
Yeah, morning is good for me too, before 10 a.m.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And Dr. Mukherjee, you said entire Monday is not good for you?
Monday afternoon is fine. Morning would be difficult. Sorry.
Afternoon's okay for me too.
Okay.
And this is Anu. Afternoon on Monday works for me. Friday the 7th, I'm out of town on vacation. But I could do the 3rd in the afternoon. My Monday in the morning is busy.
Okay.
Okay, so is there anyone, I think maybe it was John, that Monday the 3rd afternoon does not work for you?
Does not.
It does not work for you, John?
Correct.
Okay, that's the entire afternoon?
No, from 2:30 on is not good.
Okay, so 1 to 2 p.m. on Monday the 3rd afternoon, does that not work for someone? Please, I'm hoping.
I think I can do that. I have a lunch before that I can wrap up, but I can probably do 1 o'clock.
And maybe what we can do is, I think John said his commitment starts at 2:30, so we can do it 1:30 to 2:30. Would that work for everyone then?
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
1
wow.
to 2 would be better.
Oh,
Sorry, and I'm looking at Maurice's calendar as well.
And
Okay.
I can do 1 to 2. I mean, I can swing 1 to 2.
Okay, perfect. We're gonna stick with that. And while we're on a roll, I just, I don't know why I'm doing this. I shouldn't, but I'm gonna do this anyways, because sometimes if we can get on a calendar, that's the toughest part. Look at your January calendars now. Can we tentatively have a January date? So let's see. I'm thinking maybe 2nd week of January, January the 11th morning. How does that feel?
I'll be abroad for a conference. I'll be back on the 14th. Just to throw that one in. I'll be back on the 14th, and then afterwards I can look into my calendar.
And when are you leaving?
Jan 8th.
You're leaving on the 8th. Okay. All right. So the week after is, how about Friday the 18th?
Works for me.
Going on?
Morning's good.
All right.
It appears open. Yep.
Beautiful. All right. So we're blocking out, we said, what did we say? Third? We said January the 18th morning. So we'll do 9 to 10. Oh, so we'll do 9 to 10:30. That's the in-person. January the 18th. And the other date we said was Monday the 3rd from 1 to 2. Okay, great. Please look for some materials from me and the recording to this. So if you need to pass this along to anyone else, that may be a really simple way to get some of your other faculty folks an overview of what we're doing. All right. Well,
thank you. I might not be able to do Friday the 18th, but please don't let it hang on me. So in the morning, but you know, if everyone else can do it, I certainly don't want to be the rate limiting factor. So.
Oh, and you said you have a conflict on the morning of the 18th?
Yeah, so.
How's the afternoon for you?
For everybody else, I really don't want to be that guy, so.
No, well, let's try it out. How about the afternoon? How's that for you?
Doesn't work for me.
I can do the afternoon.
Yeah, it doesn't work for me.
I had 3 committee meetings that day I got to go to, so.
All right.
Okay.
We'll figure it. Okay, so tentative January 18th, but we'll figure it out.
Okay.
Okay, well, thank you, everyone. Any last thoughts, questions? Are you guys good?
We're good. Thanks, Rishu.
Okay, thank you. Take care. Have a great day. If I don't talk to you, happy Thanksgiving.
Take care now.
Same to you. Thanks.